asking you a question related. Yeah, thanks, Saif. Good morning. At least thank you for your response. Yes, good morning, Madhusudan. So it's very boring, huh? Morning you have to come for the class. You would have slept more. Hmm? So I can wake you up all now. I'll start with all the people in the name list and talk with you. We'll do that. Or shall I continue with my lessons and you people will sleep? Correct? No? You're all up and finished with your tea, coffee, whatever it is. At least if not breakfast. Yeah? Okay, Vishwajit. From which place are you, Vishwajit? From Bangalore? Or from which place have you logged in? Bangalore. Okay. If it's Bangalore, then today it is fine. It's sunny today, not like the last week. So I think you would have up by now. Okay, Madhusudan, from which place are you? Bangalore. Ishita, yourself? Yes, Ishita, you're not there. Delhi. So right now you are logged in from your place. Okay, dear. I asked whether you have logged in from your native, that is from Delhi, or you are here only. Okay. So you don't plan to come until they make it compulsory. Fine. Good. Maybe some other day I will talk with other people. So let's start. So since you're all up, I think so. Chirag, at least did you get up now or you're still sleeping? By accident, I think you switched on your video. Yes, Chirag, come on, reply. Until you reply, I will not start. Yeah, good morning, Chirag. I should tell you good morning. From which place are you, Chirag? Jaipur. Okay. So now are you up or you're still sleeping? Next time I'll ask you to switch on your video. Up. Okay. Good. Is it hot there in Jaipur or the weather has rainy or something like that? Okay, sir. Then I think this is the right time, right, in the year to visit Jaipur, tourist sleeping. The season will start now, right? Or is it rainy season still now there? Hmm. Okay, good, fine. So let's start then. Yeah. All this was only to make you all wake you up so that I saw his by accident he switched on his video and he's still sleeping. So fine. I don't know still how many of you are still sleeping, but let's start. Okay. Okay. Last class, what did we do? Last class, I taught you about requirements engineering process, and I told you we start with the main process in software engineering, four steps: requirements, design and development, validation or testing, and then we have evolution. Okay. Now I said the entire software process is only these four steps. So the first step, what you are going to study, that is entire your software engineering syllabus, what you are going to do is you are going to study the four steps. I think now you got a little bit idea of in requirements what and all is there. So in requirements only there are so many steps: illustration, okay, analysis, specification, requirements validation, requirements evaluation. Right? This is requirements engineering process. Then you studied about requirements discovery. Okay? I'm sorry, you studied the four phases will be discovery, specification, testing, and validation. So now then you studied what? Requirements discovery process. In the requirements discovery, what and all did you study? The different means in which you can collect the requirements. Can someone say how can you collect the requirements from the user? Four types, at least one or two, at least if you remember. Chirag, do you remember? How do you get the requirements? I don't want others to answer. Chirag, how do you collect requirements from the user? Assume you are building a product. Okay? You want to collect requirements. So, what is no, ma'am? How do you collect requirements from the user? You don't know the answer? So, respond something, Chirag. It is fine, even if you don't know. Don't know. Okay. Assume you are building a product. You want to know. You want to build a product. Simply, will you build, or you will ask the customer they want? You will ask, right? So how is it done? So there are four ways. Any other people in class today can explain? Harsh, Harish, Vinny, any idea? How do you collect requirements from the user? Ankita, okay. Harish, Vinny is not there. Harsh is not there. Harsh. Yeah, what kind of in interview what do you do, sir? Harsh, Harish, Vinny, any other apart from interviewing? If you are in your phone or something, you can unmute yourself and you can talk. I have no issues with that. Yes, Jeevan Raju use case is correct. Yes, Harsh, scenario. Harsh, can you tell what is interview or what is scenario? What you do there to collect requirements? Yes, good. Ask questions about the project or the product. And in the interview, there are different types: open interview, closed interviews. Closed means you have a predefined questions. You just have 100 questions, you ask those questions and you get the answer. Whereas open, you don't have, you just go on with the discussions and you get the answers for that. Okay? And you record it. There can be formal or informal interviews. Formal is nothing but there is a time and everything fixed. You come with a predefined question, you ask them and go. Informal is something you go for a lunch. There you just discuss, you talk something, you mingle with them and get to know. That is informal. So interviewing is one way of getting requirements. Then you have scenario. Scenario is like story. You ask them, they tell like. Just explain like what and how and you get that. Use cases is nothing but getting the requirements in a diagrammatical manner. Okay, you have that figure, I thought, the person and the oval and the links with the between the people and the ovals. So that is one way. Last case you have is something known as ethnography. Ethnography, it will give you is place where the people actually, the person who is taking the requirements actually goes and works there and collects the requirements. Fine. Did I give a recap about what we did yesterday? Yes, Chirag. Now if I ask you what are the different ways of collecting requirements or requirements discovery, what are they? Can you now type, sir? All the answers are there in the chat box. Still don't know? Yes, interviewing scenario, then you have use case, and then ethnography. Fine. Now, now let's come to types of functional and non-functional types of requirements. First, you have something known as user requirements. Okay. Then you have system requirements. What is user requirements? User requirement is something like a natural language way of telling what you want. Fine. And whereas in system requirements is nothing but a explanation of user requirement, or it is more detailed description of the user requirement. What are the services that the user wants, functions, and also constraints. Now, for example, I will say my requirement from the student is I said maybe I want a quadratic equation evaluation software or an application. So that is what I will say in one line. That is user requirement. What are system requirements then? I will say it should be a web application. Then it should work for three variables. It should have a coefficient can be positive or negative number. The something like this. I keep on giving more about the details about it. So that is known as system requirement. System requirement is nothing but an expansion of the user requirements. Yesterday I gave you a use case, an example where you have for a patient healthcare monitoring system also. Okay? That is user and system requirement. Always remember, user requirement is one where you give the requirement in one single line, whereas in system requirements, the one single line explanation requirement is expanded. You can add details to it, you can add constraints to it. All that is done in system requirements. Next, what you have is functional and non-functional requirements. Functional requirements, what are they? Now, they give what the system should do, or the services that are done by the system. It gives functional requirements, gives the services the system should provide. And it will also say how it reacts to a particular input, how they behave in a particular situation. Okay? They only say what the system should do. Whereas non-functional requirements are those which will tell the constraints. on those services that are defined in functional requirements. It can be constraints on timings, on development process, standards, all of that. So, non-functional requirements will say what the system should not do. We will study more about it. So, it is about non-functional requirements. Basically, they will say what are the constraints on the services or the functions that is defined by the system. Then we have domain requirements. Domain means the environment in which you are working. Yes, if you can see, there is a thin line between domain and non-functional requirements. They may overlap. Yes, I agree with it. So, domain requirements defines the constraints on the system from the domain of its operation. Okay, so you can now read about what are the functional requirements. Functionality or services, that is type of the software to be developed, what is expected by the users, all that is given. And they say what the system should do in the high level, what are the services, they should describe that. Expectations of the users, all that. And how do we express these? We express it in natural language. Natural language, ma'am, everything is in natural language. No, there is other ways of expressing your requirements. You will learn that. But most of the times, functional requirements are expressed in the natural languages. Like you can represent it diagrammatically, you can represent the functionality in a table format. All that is possible. So, here, the functional requirements for a patient, that is mental health care monitoring system, that is Care system, is given. What are the three requirements here? Now, there can be a number of requirements. Here, they have given three requirements that are possible. A user should be able to search the appointment list for all the clinics. Yes, as an end user, if you want an appointment, you have to search for that in the uh, your website or wherever it is. Okay. Then the system should generate each day for every clinic a list of patients who are expected to attend appointments that day. One of the requirement is, that is, who are the patients for today. That list should be given. Each staff member using the system has been uniquely identified. That is, every staff member should have a unique employee number. So these are some of the functional requirements for patient healthcare monitoring system. Like this, you can give a number of requirements. Now, yes, when you are giving with this functional requirements, there may be imprecision. That is the problem, like what you say, there may be the requirements may be ambiguous. One you may say like this, the other may be contradicting to that. So that should be taken care of. Maybe we cannot take care of that, but most of the time we should take care so that they are not ambiguous. That is, they are not confusing. Then we say that the functional requirements should be complete and consistent. That is, they should include all the services that have to be provided, and there should be no conflict or contradiction between the system facilities. Okay. So, if you want me to give an example for contradictory requirements in patient healthcare system, let's say, for example, I have the requirement that yeah, all the users, all the stakeholders should have a unique number, identification number. But first time when a user or a patient comes and they have to log in through that unique identification number. So what will happen if the first time patient comes, he should be able to see the doctors or something or visit a website is or get an overview of this mental health care system is what is another requirement. Now, isn't it contradictory? The first time user will not have an unique ID or something like that until he registers with that, and registering is not a requirement. So there is a contradiction or a confusion little bit there. So we should take care that the requirements are always, I mean, we can't say always requirements will be consistent and complete. Yes, there will be some contradiction and some conflicts. We should try to make it as complete and as consistent as possible. Okay? So next what we have is non-functional requirements. What are non-functional requirements? They define the system properties and constraints like reliability of the system, response time, storage requirements, constraints on the IO device capability, system representation. All this comes under non-functional requirements. Ma'am, is this required? This is very important. Hey, most of the times what happens is a software company will come up with a product, but if the non-functional requirements are not met, for example, as a customer you would have not told about the response time. So he develops a product and the response time is, what do you mean by response time? Do you have an idea? What is response time? Yes, can someone say what do you mean by response time? Guru Darshan? Okay, fine. Yes, Guru Darshan, your friends have given answers. Is it correct? Two of them have two different answers. So you are not there. Vishwajit? Yes, sir. Do you know what do you mean by response time? Harishwini? Okay, good. Time taken by the system to respond. What about Harishwini? Last time also I called you and asked you a question. You didn't reply anything for that. Okay, Harishwini, good morning, fine. But any idea? Find response time is nothing but the time taken. Both are correct. User request and the server response. Now, ma'am, if it is not a web application or not a server application, then once the time taken for it to send the response for the first instruction what you have given, okay, that is response time. Now, so all this, suppose you have not, let's say you have not defined the response time in your, okay, respond to a request from the service. Okay, thank you. So suppose, let's say, requirement is, okay, I've asked your students, right, to come up with a quadratic function evaluation application. Yes, you have developed that application. That is what it is working correctly. But let's say if I give an expression, it will take 15 minutes or something to get the answer. Will I use that system? Now, according to the people who have, I think Kavya and someone I had asked them to develop. According to them, they will say, yes, ma'am, what you asked, it is working. Check whether the answer is correct. Yes, it is correct. But it is delay, no? Then she'll say, you did not tell me that it should be very fast. Correct? From her point of view, isn't she also right? But when she gives me the system like that, will I be able to use it? With a delay of so much, and if the system gets keeps on hanging, and if I give something wrong input, if it hangs off, or if it takes only input through so and so numbers or something like that, all that if it happens, will I use that system? No, right? But according to her, you have not told in the requirements that you want it like this. So you wanted the answer should be correct. That is fine. I have given. See, that is the problem. Why all these kinds of requirements come under non-functional requirements. Most of the times, this also is specified by the customer. Even if it is not specified, the software engineers or the developers should take it into picture or take it into account. Reliability means your software should be reliable. It should not break down. Response time, the time with which it responds. Storage, how much memory requirement does it have? Right? Simply you cannot say it will only run with so much memory requirement, otherwise it will not run. So all these kinds of constraints and properties comes under non-functional requirements. And that is why they say non-functional requirements are more critical. Okay, they are more critical compared to functional requirements, and if they are not met, the system will be useless. Did you all understand what do you mean by non-functional requirement now? Any doubts? Now you can see the different non-functional requirements which are expected by the system. Now first I'll explain three types, that is product requirements, organizational non-functional requirement, and external. Then you can go through it and let me know what you did not understand. First, what you have is a product. What do I mean by product non-functional requirement? Means they specify the requirements that specify or constrain the runtime behavior of the software, like acceptability, acceptable failure rate, security requirement, usability requirement, all that will come under the product requirements. Anything that is related to that product. Let's say, for example, the product has been developed and there is no help there. So there should be a requirement that says help file should be given. So that comes under product non-functional requirement. Failure rate, security. Only authenticated users should be able to access the system. Or maybe that is functional requirement, authenticated. Maybe the system should be secure enough so that no hackers will attack the system or no malware softwares can attack it. So that is something like product requirement. Then you have organizational requirements. That is, the requirements that are derived from the policies and procedures in the customers or developers organization. Like environments, what are the process standards, what are the development environment standards, all those things comes under organizational requirements. Something you have, let's say for example, suppose after the use of this product, it should not become a biohazard. Okay, maybe the organization has a what can I say, has a procedure or a standard that they are environmental friendly. So if when you are coming up with the requirements, they should meet that requirement also. They don't cause biochemical hazard or whatever kind of that. Fine. So anything that deals with the organization, environment, procedure, policies, standards, everything comes under the organizational requirements. Next, you have external requirements. External requirements is something broader than organization. That is, it is the maybe like laws, legislator of the country or the place in which the software, the customer is using the software, or the customer or the company is developing the software. Everything comes under external requirements. Let's say, for example, a product is developed in India, then it has to follow, but you are importing some things from some other country. Okay, it has to meet all those standards and regulation. If you are importing abroad, if you are importing something from China, now Indian government has banned something, some products. You should look into it, right? Suppose you don't look into it, you develop that product and give it to the customer. But in the customer place, they don't have license, or the country does not allow you to use that product. Then is it useful? No, right? All those things should be taken care of. And where does it taken care of? In external requirements. Did you understand? Do you have any doubts in these three? External, organizational, product. Product means something which is related to the services of the software. Organization, the company which for which I am developing the product, or the company which is developing the product. And the last one is external. It depends upon the country or where the product is being developed or being used. Any doubts here? If you don't have any doubts, you can go through this tree structure and let me know which one you are having a problem. Aditya Raj says no doubts at all. Okay, sir. Then go through what is usability, what is performance, space, efficiency, dependability, security, environment. If you have any problems in this, anything which you did not understand, let me know. Okay? I think you will be able to get it. But still, so that is the exercise for you. I can give you 5, 6 minutes, or you want more. Then, out of 82 people, I'll ask any one of you to answer to any of these requirements. Is it fine? So, before me asking, if you have any doubts, you ask. Okay? It is a 5 minute exercise for you. It is 10:14 in my clock now. I'll give you 5, 10:19 till then. Okay? Fine. Okay. Deepa has one doubt about safety and security. In others, you don't have any doubts. Understood all the things. Okay. I will answer to Deepa, sir. See, every company will have their safety and security requirements in the sense. For example, let's take for Bosch Automobiles. Fine. They are developing a vehicle software or something like that. Or let's take for Mahindra only, some company, okay, or GM company. They produce product cars and everything, right? Now, currently in India, the safety or security norm which follows for all motor vehicles is, I hope you know, that is Bharat 4 or Bharat 5, some standard is there, right? Okay. Now, if GM produces a product to our some company here or some to the India or something like that, now shouldn't they follow the safety and the security standards that is mentioned in Indian government safety security requirement? That is that Bharat standard, whatever they give. Did you understand my point? Maybe they are produced in some country, but when they want to sell their product here, shouldn't they follow the security and the safety requirement of this country? Did you understand that? Now, let's say, ma'am, this is too much, ma'am, this example. Okay, fine. Let's say, for example, they are developing in BBMP has a security and safety plan for every house or building or commercial purpose here, right? So if there is something like that, if a company is coming up with a building requirement, a building plan or something, shouldn't they follow the safety and security norms of the government specified norms, right? That is nothing but safety and security requirements that is given. Ma'am, this is, you gave example for motor vehicles, you gave example for building plan. For software, how is it possible, ma'am? Let's say, for example, we are developing a software which is for IoT device. That is, let's say for house automation, fire alarm system. Okay. Now, if we are developing such a thing, shouldn't we be careful about the safety and the security of the product what we are developing? Yes. And if that product, let's say for example, IoT device or an electronic based device or a chip you have installed at a home or some appliance, if it blasts or so there is a short circuit or whatever happens, it should follow utmost security and safety standards there. That all those kinds of requirements will come under safety and security requirements. It can be standards, it can be the laws governed by security and all that safety. Basically, it is not like hacker kind of a thing. It is like um, it is does not cause physical harm to any kind of people. That comes under here. Whereas in product requirement, there is security. Have you observed? That is where, if you can see, here in the product requirement, third one you have is security. There is nothing but unauthorization or access. But here it is about physically you're not harming or doing damage to anything. Deepa, did I answer your question? Okay. Others, all of you are clear? Come on. I myself doubt. Mm, so, in product requirement, there is something known as space requirement. What do you mean by that? Operational and development. Okay. Sir, operational means it is working. Development is you are developing the product, Ishita. Once it is developed, it comes into operational. Did you get that? So, what do you mean by space requirement? Who will answer? Deepa? Yes, it is storage. Yes, how much memory is required? Is it occupying too much of memory? Whether it is consuming the more memory space? All that will come under space requirement. If your product is taking too much of memory or space, will you install that product in your system or in your phone or something like that? You delete it, right? You will say it is occupying so much space. Isn't it? So that should also be taken care of. Even though the customer will not say explicitly, you should make it a point that the space requirement is minimum. So can I go ahead? I think rest of the things are all understandable. Okay. So non-functional requirement may affect the overall architecture rather than the individual component. Yes, a single non-functional requirement such as security may generate a number of functional requirements that define the system service. Now, what does this mean? Ma'am, I say there should be security should be provided. When I say security should be provided, in turn this will lead to functional requirements. Functional requirements, what does that mean, ma'am? There should be user account, there should be a page for login, and everyone should have a username and password to log in order to have a username and password, they should have an page for creating the account. Yes or no? One non-functional requirement led to two functional requirements. Agree? When I say security, as soon as I say security, it will have two more things. Maybe logging in feature is required, creation of account is required. So, functional, non-functional requirements may lead to functional requirements. Next, you have this. This I already taught you. What does it mean? An example of non-functional requirement in patient healthcare system they have given. You can go through it. See, in for this inpatient healthcare system, clear example for product they have given. That is, the patient healthcare monitoring system should be available during normal working hours from so and so time. This is a product requirement. Organizational requirement, well, there is one thing. That is, users of this should authenticate themselves using a health authority identity card. That is, the organization, that is your hospital, will give you a identity card, and they say the user should authenticate to this system using that identity card. So this is an organizational requirement. External requirement is now whenever patient privacy provision, a patients we are using their private data, right? It is protected under some provision. This is a law. That is, government has certain privacy laws, right? So if you're developing a product, then the privacy of the patient should be protected according to the government law. So this is an external requirement. This does not come under functional or I'm sorry, these are all non-functional requirements. But yes, these under that they come under these categories. So even though you don't tell a customer, your I'm sorry, your software developers that privacy, you just say privacy should be protected. But under what they should the whoever is developing it, they should use this according to the local law. See, if they are developing for India, India has its own law for privacy protection of its citizens. They have to follow that. If they are developing the same product in some other country, then they should use that privacy protection law and develop the product. They can't say I have developed it for this country, use the same thing. No. If they do that, what happens? Yes, your product is released. The customer, he has no other option. He will buy it, but he will never use it because he cannot use it, right? Again, it will be against his law. That is what happens. If Facebook is using some of its features in US, it is banning some of those features in India because it is the law of this government here. They can't bring it down, right? Agreed? Am I clear with this? So it may all sound, what is this, ma'am? This is all not required. No, it is very much required. If this feature, like privacy, everything in the product, if you're not taken care of, what happens? The customers will sue the company, right? That is why the Facebook and everything, they are going through so many cases. They have sued it for so many dollars. So that is why these kinds of requirements are very important. If they don't follow that, they can't use the system. Whatever system is being developed according to function, yes, it is working, but you cannot put it to use. It will be a scrap. So requirements gathering is one of the most important phase in software development. Do you agree now? So what are the goals? State precisely imprecise requirements, verifiable non-requirements, and what they convey to the intents of the user, all of that. Usability. Okay. Now, in non-functional requirements, some of these ways metrics for specifying are speed, like in operation requirements you have speed. You will say, how do you specify the operational requirements? That is the speed of the system through, like number of transactions that it should process. I will say the non requirements is 200 transactions per second. So it means that your system, whatever you're developing, it should be able to do 200 transactions per second. Like size, this is for the memory requirement. Ease of use, this is the usability requirement. Reliability, this is operational. Mean time for failure, probability of availability. Robustness, this is also time to restart. Portability, this is also like operational, I can say. So you can measure all those requirements using these metrics, or you can specify those requirements, that is non-functional requirements, using these metrics. Yeah. Then you have domain requirements, operational domain, like they say in train control system. You should take into account the braking characteristics in different weather. That is your surroundings or your environment. You take care of that while developing the product. The, most of the times it applies to embedded systems or physical products development. Here also, if the domain requirements or environmental requirements are not satisfied, the system may not be used. Here you should know the understandability and implicitness. That is, if you, whenever you want to come up with these requirements, it is not very easy. You should understand the system and you should work there. All that is required. So problem with this domain requirements, you can say, yes, I have come up with, but it is not easy to come up with domain requirements. Why? because understanding the system or the environment is not that very easy. Some things you implicit or you say, oh, yes, I know, but it may not be working like that. So these are the problems with domain requirements. So this completes my requirements, types of requirements. One is user requirement, then is system requirements, then you have non-functional requirements and functional requirements. Any doubts still there? Can I continue? Okay. Ganesh, are you online? No. Darshan, are you online? Okay, thanks, Darshan. Darshan, can you unmute your microphone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Darshan. So I can you see my slide? Can you read out? So the next topic is requirement specification. So Darshan, can you read out? What is there on the
Both like, ma'am.
yeah? What is there on the slide? You can read out.
The process of writing done the
Writing it
user,
is down. It is
down
not
the
down. It
user
is
and
ha.
down the user and the system requirements in a requirement document.
Okay. Next point.
User, ma'am,
Yeah, next point you can read out.
user requirements have to be understandable by end users and customers who do not have a technical background.
Okay. Next.
The six, the system requirements are more detailed requirements and may include more technical information.
Yeah. Then.
The requirements may be part of a contract or the system development.
Oh, okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Now
ma'am.
others. Thank you, Darshan. Others, can you read out on your own and let me know what does it mean? Very simple sentences. So what does this requirement specification mean? See, very simple thing is you learned so many types of requirements now. Functional requirements, this non-functional requirements, how to take the requirements, everything you know. Will you keep it in your head? No, you will write it down in a document, and that is known as requirements document. This step is known as requirement specification. So requirement specification is nothing but what and all requirements you collected, the different types of requirements. what you collected: user requirements, system requirements, functional requirements, non-functional requirements. And in the different ways you collected, which are those different ways? Interviews, scenarios, use cases, ethnography, all this you did. You got all the requirements. What will you do next? You will write it down. That process of writing it down is known as a requirement specification. Did you get? So here in requirement specification, you will learn how to write it, what things you have to write, who and all will write, all that things about those documents you will learn here in requirement specification. Now did you get what does it mean? Yes. So after your discovery, and you will come to requirements specification. Yes. So here user requirements have to be understandable by the end user and customers who do not have technical background. Ma'am, if I will write down does not mean simply I will write something for my understandability. No. You will write down so that anyone can understand the document what you have written. Even the non-technical person should also be able to understand what is the requirements, what is expected of the system. And this document which has been written, it also serves as a contract. What is contract? It is like a agreement between the customer and the software developer. I think I've already told you. When they discover and they write it down, this is actually what happens. They will write it down. After once it is write it down, the software engineer along with this company will review it whether it is proper. Then they will send it to the customer to check whether he is agrees to it. He will also check if he has some issues. He will send it back to the developer saying that this is not what I expected. So by doing so, what happens is, even though during discussions they have missed some points, or even though each one of them have their own way of understanding earlier, but in the document they will make it clear that what they are expecting it is there. Once they both of them agree on that, it is signed by both the customers as well as the software developers, or the company as well as the customers, so that during end when the product is delivered something is not right, they can check this document and say you had agreed for this, you are not giving me this, so I will not accept or I will not pay you money. So this document which is being developed, it acts as a contract between the developer and the company and the customer. And before they sign this contract, or this document, requirements document, will be signed both by the customers as well as the developers, the company there. Only then will they go ahead with the next things. Did you get it? So that the main reason why they don't write it in technical terms is, suppose a non-technical person, someone, a manager, he does not understand the technicality, but he knows the functionality. If it is written properly, then they can also agree on it, and they will develop the software. Did you get this? What is specification? Why is it important? Because it acts as a um, contract between the customer and the this thing. How can I write this software requirement specification? I can use natural language. Okay, natural language is something like the way in which we use English sentences. How do we interpret? Like that, we just write it in normal sentences. Next, you have something known as structural language. Even though natural language is easiest to write, we use structural language. Reason being is, This structural language gives a similar to natural language, but it has a standard form or template. Why is this required? Is maybe we miss some things while we are expressing it in a story or a normal document. So if we give a template, what happens is we will not lose any of the data. So that is nothing but structured natural language way. Otherwise, we can use something known as design descriptions. Actually, the design description approach uses programming language or abstract operational model. Okay, but it is rarely used now. Next, you have graphical notation, that is nothing but diagrammatically you represent the requirements. One example is use case diagram and sequence diagram. Use case diagram you have learned, sequence diagram you will learn in designing in next module. The other way of representing it is mathematical specification. Mathematical specification means there is a subject known as finite state machine, wherein you represent the system in mathematical way. Okay, you don't have to go in depth about it because it is not easy for you to understand, but you can think of only two things you have for your syllabus, that is structured representation, use cases, and you have something known as software requirements document. Okay, but if they ask you in the exam, you can give these five types are there and what they do in two sentences. Then you can explain structural language and something known as next topic software requirements documentation. It is nothing but structured natural language that you will explain. These things are above your syllabus. You will learn them later. Okay, but use cases and sequence diagrams you will learn. Use cases little bit you learnt, but in the next module you will learn in detailed way. And I will take up extra classes for that to cover so that you come up with those use cases. Am I clear? I said I have to write down the requirements. How do I write down? There are different ways of writing it down. One is natural language. You just write down like a paragraph what and all is required. But when you write it like that, chances are there you miss certain points. So in order to avoid that, we come up with structured natural language. In structured natural language, you have template. Template means you have placeholders. What you have to, what and all you have to write, they give headings. You fill it there. Okay. Design description, it uses programming language constraints or design constraints or models. Graphical notation, it is diagrammatically you are writing down the requirements. One way is use case diagrams, which you have learned, and the other is sequence diagram, which you will learn later. Then you have mathematical specifications. Mathematical specifications, that is, there is something known as finite state machine or mathematical concepts which will allow you to represent the system. Ma'am, then which one to write? Should we write the requirements in all the four types or five types? See, it may not be possible. Sometimes for some applications you cannot write mathematical application. For some you cannot write graphical notations. So based on what product you are developing, how easy and how, I can't say easy, which is the best way so that they represent all the requirements, you will use that type here. Did you get it? Now, whatever I explained, the same thing they will tell for natural language and this thing. Hey, where did I go? One second. Sorry, guys. Actually, I was working on these slides and I've missed some, I've misplaced some slides. So first one is natural language specification. I want you to go through it, read it out. So, ma'am, you said natural language here. They say diagrams and tables. See, whenever we are writing requirements document, we don't say I will use only natural language or I will use only structured or graphical. We use a combination of that. So it may involve diagrams as well as tables. So whatever we write, it should be understood by the users and customers, and it should be non-technical. Agreed with this? Guidelines for writing. These are some of the guidelines. Please go through it. Most of the times they say invent a standard format and use it for requirements. Most of the time, every company will have their own format for requirements gathering. So whenever you're doing requirements gathering, you will be using that format. And what do I mean by format? See, suppose I have to take a student feedback from you, we take, right? Fine. We have our feedback. We have our format which we give from the college, right? Some other college will have some other format. Similarly, each company has their format for gathering the requirements. So we use that standard formats for gathering the requirement. Usually it covers everything, but if you feel something is missing there, you talk with the higher ups or someone and you can add to that. It does not mean that if something is missing, you can leave it. Use the language in a consistent way. Text highlighting to identify key parts. Always we highlight whichever. Avoid using computer jargon because we don't want to include technical details in requirements document. Why? Because we want non-technical users, that is the customers or managers or anyone, to understand the requirements. That's why we avoid computer jargon. Here it should also include an explanation on why a particular requirement is necessary. Okay. Yes, there are always problems in anything. There is lack of clarity, requirements confusion, amalgamation. Amalgamation means different requirements are clubbed into a single one. So that is known as amalgamation. So they have a requirements for the insulin pump system. System should measure blood sugar and deliver insulin every 10 minutes or something like this. You write it down. Next is can read out what is structured specification. ಹ್ಮ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು. Mhm. So structured up specification, writing requirements where the freedom of requirement writer is limited and requirements are written in a standard way. Some types of requirements, rigid business system requirements. Ma'am, what is this? I can give you an example. See, most of the times they have something like this, like structured means first there should be a function, there should be a description, what is the input, source, output, destination. It should always the requirement. If I say requirement 1, for that requirement it should have what it is, function, description, input, output, like this. Like this, there is a structure. You just simply don't write like here. You just simply wrote it in sentences in natural language way. Whereas in structured, Whereas in structured, you have something like this. If you come up with a new requirement, that requirement you can't write it in a sentence. You will have it one. You should have one function heading, then description about that, input to that requirement, source for that requirement, output, and destination. Maybe sometimes it may not. Some things are not applicable. Maybe then you will say not applicable or hyphen something like that. But yes, the structure or the format is rigid. You cannot change it. Did you understand? Difference between natural language and structured? In structured, you have a template. So this is a template here. And any requirement you come up with is given within this template. Yes, fine with this? Then you can also give tabular specification, that is requirements can be given in a table format. That is like this. What are the conditions, actions? Only tabular way you cannot have. Either it is uh, included along with natural language or structured specification. Okay. Then you have something known as form based. Here also you define the function, what is the input, what is the output, what is the information, action, precondition, and side effects. Something like this. This is nothing but a structured specification for, this is another template. Here you have action, requirement, precondition, postcondition, and side side effect. So an example for that is here. Okay. Then you have graphical. Graphical is nothing but use cases wherein the actors are given by that persons and ovals represent the functionality. And the link says which stakeholder is associated with which functionality. So that is one way of getting the requirements or specifying the requirements. So am I clear? Did I go fast or was it fine? Did you understand? Okay. I'll stop, otherwise it will be too much for you today, right? Any doubts you have? Next class, I have something known as software requirements document, very important. That is, specification is written in a document. There is a format for that. You will learn that, and software validation. I'll finish this tomorrow. I think Saturday I have class, right? 1 hour I'll finish that, and then I will go to the second module. Okay. Second module is little bit tricky actually. How many of you have studied object-oriented programming like C++? Any of you have an idea? I think people who are from which background, computer science background, will have an idea, right? That is, you have studied computer science in 12th standard. Then you will have an idea. Yeah. So those who have studied that, it will be good for you to grasp. But for others it is difficult. I understand. But clearly I will tell you. From the examination point of view, the answers are not very difficult. You can learn those answers and write. But understanding, I can't guarantee you that 100% you will understand that subject. Reason being is, for that you have to learn object oriented programming. And object oriented programming, you have it in fourth semester. And for that object oriented programming, how do you design? You have it in the second module. So it is difficult for understanding. Maybe yes, you get 50% of the subject, but you can prepare for only 4 or 5 questions are there in that chapter. You can prepare for that chapter and you can write in the exam. But once you learn in the next semester object oriented programming, you will get a very clear idea. I will do my level best to make you understand, but I can't teach object oriented programming now. That is the only problem. So the others, don't worry about it. It is not that it is a very tough subject. It's only that a little bit thing is required by you. Okay. So that I will start in the next class. 1 hour I will do this, and 1 hour I'll start the second module. And it will not take much time, maybe 4 or 5 classes I can finish that. Okay. So your second first internals portions will be complete. And I want you to start writing your assignments. So I'll call out your names. Attendance, please be ready. Okay. USN 1, 2, 3, 4, Abhishek, 5, Abhishek Mishra, yeah, 6, 7, 7, 7 is Aditya Kumar, 4 is present, okay. 7 is not there, 8, 8, 9, yes, 10, 11, 12, 12, USN 12, Akshat, yeah, 13, 14, Anagha, 15, 16, 17, yeah, 15 I've marked you present. 7, what were you doing when I called your name? Don't say network issue. 16 is done, 17 is done, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, Apurva, 22, 23, 24, yes, 25, 25.